Video is brought to you by Fallen Dominion Studios. Check out their website at fallendominionstudios.com. Hey there folks, welcome back to the Dice Odyssey. I'm Kaz, and today I'm going to be bringing to you a dice skirmish game that has been very popular. It was actually released, I believe, in the early 90s, and it kind of, I guess it kind of lost prominence in some way, but it won some awards back in the mid-90s. And now SFR, a company that has taken over the license, has been bringing this back into the limelight, so to speak. Dragon dice, okay? In this game, you're vying for control of different territories. You have to at least get two to win, or you're trying to demolish the other team's dice army, and it could be made up of all sorts of different kinds of fantasy races. This game's is up on Kickstarter right now. They're trying to introduce some more sets that you can collect, because this basically allows you to continue to expand the game out. It is a two-player game. Let me go ahead and just give you just a general overview of what's going on, and then we're going to go ahead and get back to my final thoughts on it. All right, I'm going to give you a general brief overview of Dragon Dice. I'm not going to hit nowhere near to every rule in the game, because there are quite a few, especially when it comes to the magic abilities that you can do. But I'm going to give you an idea of what the game kind of looks like here. Right here, you've got 4 different kinds of Dragon Dice. It's the name of the game. Different kinds that you got that can come out of the pack there, and you would normally keep 2 in reserve on each summoning pool to start. Here's the different kinds of terrains. Now, the different colors do represent different areas that you can go to, and they will also affect the different kinds of things that you can actually do in the game. These are the Tree Folk dice, and these are the Firewalker dice, okay? And each one are matched in terms of the kinds of soldiers and monsters and things that you can recruit or take into battle. For example, these are going to be your monster dice, okay? They're going to have a lot of different kinds of ID faces on them that might, some of them may be very different from your other soldier type of dice, okay? You've got different kind of health represented in these dice. The smallest, you get 8 of these small ones. There's 1 health each, okay? The 2 health are right here. There's 4 of those, and they're bigger each time as you go. The 3 health are right there. They're considered the large. And then the monsters are considered 4 health each. Basic goal of the game is to capture at least 2 of these terrain dice, okay? Or to destroy the other player's army, all right? And so that's basically either way you can win. Now, each die is going to have different facings that are actually thematic to their creature type, or I should say race. You know, like for movement, it'll be this symbol, but if you were to play with Firewalker dice, it would be a completely different symbol. It looks like kind of like this, actually. Okay, looks like a footprint with flame in it. And there's different kinds of symbols for different kinds of actions in the game, whether that's saves, maneuvering, magic, missiles, or melee, all right? And again, that's going to be thematically different according to whichever side you're playing on. So whenever you start playing, you have to actually, you'll probably have to check the rulebook a little bit just to make sure what your race can do and what does what. So just keep that in mind. And what you're basically going to do is you're going to actually make armies out of the amount of soldiers and monsters and things that you have here. And then you're going to ultimately figure out which terrains that you're going to actually fight over, and ultimately there's going to be 3 in the game to start. And you have different areas that you're going to be fighting over the terrain. You got the Horde army, you've got the frontier terrain, it's more the campaign army, you got the home terrain, which is the home army, and then just to kind of get into it, you got the dead unit area, you've got buried unit area, you got reserve armies, which again, if you have anything in reserve, you have opportunities to call those into battle later on. And you will have a couple of dragons in the summoning pool here to where you can actually summon them at different points. So now we also received 2 undead army packs that we're not going to be using in this, but just to know that they do have things like that. This game is expandable. And that's kind of why they're up on Kickstarter right now. They're expanding the game out with more races and things like that. Ultimately, once you set the game up, you're going to have 3 terrains laid out, okay, for the 3 different armies to fight over. All right. Ultimately, remember, you're trying to control at least 2 of these or destroy the other army. Now, however you have set this terrain, or however the terrain has been maneuvered, okay, it's going to determine on what that army is going to fight with. For example, here it's showing that you can fight with missiles, okay, like range weapons. Now, if it gets down to 1, that means, hey, I can fight with magic. Or if I go to like up to 5, for example, it shows that I can fight with melee weapons, all right? And this is going to correspond to the dice that you roll in the game and the army that's sitting there. Once you get up to 8, you can actually get a special ability for that terrain, and it'll talk about it in the rule book, but the special ability opens up for that terrain once 8 is hit. Now, what you're going to start the game with, 30 units of health, and you're going to have 15, no more, I'm sorry, than 15 health each, and each army that you actually put out on the board to fight. To start the game, the terrains each would be rolled, okay? And then you would go ahead and choose the terrain that you actually want to maneuver. So you would announce, hey, I want to maneuver the terrain to your opponent. Now, the opponent has the option of contesting this. Now, I could say, hey, I want to maneuver the frontier terrain. I don't have to tell them up or down. Remember, I want to capture it. But at the same time, you might want to maneuver certain things to be able to attack in certain ways. Right now, this one's magic attacking, okay? So that's what that army would have to do. But let's say I wanted to move it up. Well, if they don't contest it, I can go ahead and move it any which way I want. So, because I don't have to tell them. It's like a bluff. So I'm going to move it up to where I can actually do ranged attacks, okay? Which is that missile right there, that missile attack, that arrow, okay? And so from that point, then I can go ahead and once we've gone through the turn sequence of the beginning phase, spell and effect expiration, racial abilities, and 8th phase special abilities, which is the terrain I'm telling you about. Dragon attack phase, if you have a dragon actually present at the terrain, the dragons attack current player's army even if they summon the dragon, right? So basically, if an army is present at that terrain, the dragon attacks them. But we don't have any of that going on. So what we're going to do is in the army phase, you have a list of different things that you can do, okay? The first thing you're going to do is a first march. You're going to maneuver, and then you're going to do an action. Let's say now I wanted to go ahead, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and I want to maneuver this terrain right here from my horde army. Well, the other player is now saying, I can test it. So now what you're going to do is you're going to roll, okay? And you're going to determine who has a higher maneuverability according to how many is on the dice here. You're going to count up how many maneuver icons you're going to have on all of your dice. And then the other player is going to roll. And whoever has higher maneuverability gets the opportunity to maneuver that terrain. That is how your the contesting happens, okay? Now, if you have a tie, the active player always wins it. And now the active player can now go ahead and do their action, okay? And what they're going to do is they're saying, hey, okay, I'm maneuvering. First off, I'm maneuver this thing up, and I have, missile attack. For at that point, I'm going to go ahead and re-roll, and I'm going to go see how many long-range attacks I can do. Now, if I have any, this player, and it really doesn't matter whichever kind of attacking style there is, there's going to be an attack and a defense typically. So this player is going to, if I roll at least one attack on them, especially the ranged here, this player is going to roll and see if they get saves, okay? Now again, that's going to be race specific. It's in the rule book, but if they roll saves, they're able to fend off some of my attack basically. Now the cool thing is with ranged, I wouldn't even have to attack from where I'm at to right where I'm at. I could attack from, like, for example, my horde army over to the next one, which is the frontier terrain. The only place you can't attack on, for example, missile attacks, you cannot attack the reserves area or the home terrain into another home terrain, okay? You can't do it that way. But like, for example, melee, you have to attack directly across from where you are, but, the missiles allow range attacks like it would in real life, right? That was my first march. Now, for the second march, I can pick a different army, and I can now maneuver again and do the same thing I just did at a different spot. So, for example, let's say I'm going to use this home terrain, and I want to maneuver this die right here, okay? That basically means if they contest it, okay, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to roll each set of dice, do what you just saw that we did, and then whoever has more maneuvers has control. Now this thing, let's just pretend for a second that I want to move it down because now I want to use magic ability, okay? that magic ability right there. And now I can attack with magic. What I would do then is I would go ahead and roll and see how many magic icons and IDs and all that other stuff comes up to see whether or not I'm actually able to hit them with magic. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to count the points of all the magic. I'm going to choose and announce all spells and the target of each spell, okay, against each, each die that's out there. Now, there's the thing. You have a whole cavalcade of different kinds of spells that are color specific and even combination specific, as you can see. Okay, there are a ton of them. I went too many pages in. There are a ton of different spells that you can cast, which will do all sorts of different kinds of things to the other army. Now, in the end phase, you're going to reinforce. After the first 2 marches, okay, that player's turn's pretty much done. The reinforce means that you can move any or all of your units from your reserves to any or all of the terrain. So, for example, I could put these right out here if I want to. You could also retreat. You can move any or all of your units from any or all terrains or reserves. There's also the spell and effect expiration, end of turn expiration. So now keep in mind, there's also a spell that's going to summon dragons at some point. And again, this is all going to be according to however the dragons attack. They're going to have all sorts of fun little attacks that they can use against the armies out here. And that's going to be according to how they roll, okay, or whatever they roll on. Right, this game is not complicated in the play. It's just got a lot to it when it comes to things like spells and SAI attacks and things like that. And pretty much that's how the game is played in a nutshell. Now let's get back to my final thoughts. The game in and of itself scratches some itches that I absolutely love. For example, I'm a big fan of Dice Masters. Wasn't a huge fan of necessarily all the collectability, but I was a huge fan of the game itself, the mechanics, and in many cases, for me, taking different kinds of superheroes, a superhero team that I can draft, right, because that's a little bit of a different style of gameplay, and taking that army of superheroes, so to speak, taking them against my friend's army, right, or however many friends are at the table. In this game, you kind of get that same itch scratched, except you're not necessarily drafting dice. You're actually trying to muster your troops into different places, trying to keep them from all dying. Pulling troops from reserve, doing things like summoning dragons and casting spells. I mean, the game in and of itself has a really cool look to it as well. I love all the different ways that the dice look, because each and every single race is going to be thematic in its own right, okay? That could also very possibly be confusing to some people if you've never played this game before. The first thing I'm going to say right out of the gate, this is not for beginners. You really need to sit down and play this game a lot to get through all the intricacies. The game in and of itself is actually fairly simple to learn. It's just that deeper complexity that goes into it. I didn't think it was going to be quite as complex. I never played the original Dragon Dice, so I didn't know that it was quite that complex. But when you are sitting there casting spells and you're trying to figure out the colors of different armies and things like that, the different people that you're using in your army to figure out what you're going to be using, what kind of magic you can cast, it can tend to get a little overwhelming on your first time through. So I'm dead serious about this. Unless you know what you're getting into, be prepared for that. So don't just sit down some new person to the table who's never played games before and try to throw this game on them, because it is going to be a little overwhelming. But once you get past that hump of learning some of the complexities, the game really starts to shine with what you can do in the game. That you can actually fight with melee attacks, you can fight with missile attacks, bows and arrows and whatever else they're throwing at people. And I also like the idea, though, that you can also make that terrain go up or down. See, you can bluff people out and say, yeah, I'm going to go this way, and they might not attack you this turn, but yet, yes, I'm going to go ahead and bring that terrain up to level 8 so I can capture it. As the thing is, the cool part is, even if somebody captures a terrain, that other player still has an opportunity to bring that terrain back down so that they can, stop that other person from winning. Again, you can also wipe everybody out and destroy your team or your opponent anyway. So the game in and of itself is fun because Again, you're just trying to figure out how am I best going to be able to muster my army together to take out this area right here, capture this terrain, or destroy them. Again, a lot of cool choices in the game. Now, some people may not like it because it's strictly dice rolling, right? Granted, there's some mitigating factors to it. I mean, there's things that you can do to help with some of that, but at the same time, you are rolling dice. The game's called Dragon Dice. So if you went into this looking for something that is just pure strategy, there's no randomness hardly at all, that's not this game. But casting the magic is awesome once you're able to figure out all the different complexities of the different kinds of spells that you can cast, especially with the different kinds of people you're using, or colors, I'm sorry, then the game really starts opening up. Now, when it comes down to summoning those dragons, a tip for you. Don't do it unless you're getting ready to leave a territory, or you're pretty much almost completely wiped out. You know, I mean, this is really rare, but you're almost completely wiped out and you just want to try to do as much damage to the other team as you can. Call it like a Hail Mary, but you're gonna die too, probably. You know, because once you summon a dragon, that sucker's like asking the Hulk to come out on the team, and he's already angry with everybody, and he doesn't recognize friend from foe. You have a strong possibility you're gonna get hit too. One thing I wish would have happened, and maybe there's a better way to do it, I don't know. I do like the fact that on the player boards, the mat that we've got, that, you know, the ways that you play, the different mechanics, or I'm sorry, the different phases, I like that that's printed out there for you to see. Makes it easy. I don't have to go back to the rule book. Again, the phases themselves are easy to learn. Okay, they're very straightforward. But when it comes to the complexities of different kinds of attacks, more specifically magic, I wish that I had a player board that would have listed all those things out instead of me having to go back to that rule book and constantly thumbing through it to figure out what color works with what and what each type of race does and this, that, and the other. It did get a little confusing at times. I kind of wish it had been laid straight out for each player at the table so that even between turns we're just looking at it and going, okay, I can do this. And I would have almost wish, and I don't know how they could have done this really well, but I really kind of wish they would have made it race specific. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm talking about the player board itself. If you had like a personal sheet for that, I kind of wish they could have done that, because again, quick reference would have been so great in this game and would have saved me so many questions that we had, you know, at the table. Again, though, that does not detract from the game overall. I just kind of hope that they include that at some point, because that would be so great. I'm asking for it, you know. But anyway, like the game a lot. Go check it out on Kickstarter. I think it's still going right now. But anyway, thank you so much for watching Dice Odyssey videos. And by the way, have you played Dragon Dice? Have you gotten into that game when you were younger? Did you get a lot of different kinds of sets? Because again, this game's expandable, right? And that's kind of what they're doing right now. And again, thank you so much. You have a blessed day, and game away.